after the first lockdown, and it just seems like everything goes haywire in the second lockdown. Okay. Yeah, all right, looks like we're back. That's good. Flux capacitor, it's fluxing, and it's all good. Okay, so we're going to try and take a look at a number of things in terms of setting up using the level sequencer. I said earlier before we broke for lunch that there were a number of different issues that I ran into during this process. So we'll likely run into them again, and we'll kind of work through them. It's not entirely intuitive in terms of setting up a level sequence cinematic. And I think partially it has to do with the fact that it's sort of built from a lot of the framework that already exists inside of Unreal, i.e. things that were originally developed not with cinematic cameras in mind. I.e. a level sequencer is actually an actor, right? So I think one of the things that I find sort of difficult to get used to and sort of visualize in terms of working with level sequencer is that the level sequencer can act as a container for assets. So you're not working non-destructively on a pre-rendered clip. You're actually working within the assets themselves, within the clip. And Blender works very similarly when you set up an animatic and use their editor plugin to be able to put animatics together inside of Blender. Very, very similar kind of philosophy where you're working directly on the assets, right? So one of the things we'll kind of set up first, let's get our sort of viewport set up and ready to work on this. So the first thing that I'm going to do, let's actually move this camera forward to the props here. We don't have a lot to look at for the time being, but it's enough to sort of place a camera and move it around. It should be okay. Remove this Roman stone thing. So, this guy.
Al, you're not streaming on Discord.
I am not. Oh, yes. Thank you. Jeez. Am I ever going to figure it out, guys? I don't know. All right. Let's, okay. Pop over here. Okay. So let's go over. I'm just going to bring this Roman cobblestone up here. You guys didn't miss anything. It's all good. So, I don't know. Okay, so let's see. First thing I want to do is I want to tear off kind of a cinematic window for me to sort of work with. I'm going to try and make some UI room here. Now, there are two ways you can manipulate the viewport inside of Unreal. One is to sort of come into this drop down here, and you have the option to select between a variety of different layouts. I kind of don't like working this way. I'll show you why. We'll pop over here. It just feels very claustrophobic, like you're squished into these tiny windows. I've always liked to capitalize on dual monitors, so I'm going to flip my layout back to one pane. Right? Instead, I'm going to come over here to Windows Viewport, and this allows you to tear off a second viewport over here, right? And it's automatically popped up in my second monitor, right? I prefer this. I'm going to pop this up here, even though it's a bit awkward, but just so you can see sort of what I'm doing. So inside here, I'm going to go to my perspective view, and I'm going to turn this into a cinematic viewport. And what this does is it gives a little bit of information that's a little bit more sort of conducive to working on animatics. So you got your what are called transport controls, so you can do play, stop, fast forward, etc. And you've got a few additional tools up here that will allow you to sort of work on your cinematic framing and cinematic composition. One of the things that I like to turn on over here are my composition overlays, and I generally like to turn on my safe action and safe title. And there's also a letterbox mask, which is handy as well, in case you oversize the window, so you know exactly what you're seeing in terms of your aspect ratio. The letterbox mask is incorrect. We're not working at 42351. I'm going to turn it off for now because the grid is set to, compositionally set to HD. Right? So we'll leave it at that. Okay, so let's see. Next thing we want to do is, it's interesting. I've got here in my original lecture to clean up the UI, i.e. get rid of game objects and things like that, especially in the cinematic viewport, but it looks like it now comes default that way, right? So I don't have a player start, I don't have anything in here of that nature. So if I were to actually, so the player start icon's not in there, right? And any of the game icons are not in there. So that's super handy. It's just nice and clean for when you're setting up your cutscene cameras, right? Okay, let's see. I don't need to talk about that. I need to talk about that. Let's turn off tab and right. I think we're good. So one of the things we want to do is we want to create a camera that can drive our cinematics, right? So we can come over to cinematics, and over here we'll see a couple of custom sort of actors, and they're planning on building this library up. Right? So right now we have a camera rail, we've got a camera crane, and we have a cine camera actor. And again, Unreal is planning on building this out, putting as many rigs as are available on a live action shoot. But for now, we just want the cine camera actor. Right, so I'm going to drag this into the shot. You can see that straight away, I get a little mini preview window of the cine camera actor. I can also select it from here, right? And now I'm piloting that cine camera actor. Right? So this is the one we're going to use because it ties directly into our level sequencer. Plus, it's got more versatility than your standard camera, right? So there are a few additional things that we can set. So for example, we can set our film back here now, right? And so in this particular case, we'll go, well, actually, let's just leave it 69 digital film, right? And there are other sort of settings that you can adjust that you may recognize from taking a look at Maya cameras. So we've got our film back, so we can set our camera aperture, we can set our camera focal length, et cetera, right? So there's quite a few things that we can do here in terms of that. It's got powerful post-processing, right? So we can add in blooms, exposure, chromatic aberration, lens distortion, all kinds of other stuff to mimic a real-world camera. But we'll get into a lot of that stuff in depth later. There was something that I glossed over that I wanted to touch back on again in terms of the camera settings. Oh yeah, film back. So some of you guys might be familiar with photography in terms of shutter, aperture, what are the three? Shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. Thank you. Right? So you guys are familiar with that, but when you're dealing with more kind of advanced sort of camera capture devices, one of the other things that you have to think about as well is the film back. So the aperture is generally the opening of the lens, right? But the opening of the camera body itself also has an effect on the final look of your image, and that's the camera body aperture, right? And through that camera body aperture, you hit the film back. So the film back is literally it's the very back plate where your image gets captured onto, whether it's film emulsion or these days digital sensor, right? And so the size of that sensor also has an effect on how your image looks, right? So that's something that to kind of keep in mind as you go through this particular program. You'll be learning more and more about the subtleties of how a camera works. Okay, so let's get in and create a folder for our cinematics. And here I'm going to create a let's create a level sequence for So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate my cinematics into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Let's say we're working on, like a 20-minute short or something of a reasonable length where you can slice it up into 3 different acts. Now, this is more of an artistic consideration, right? So oftentimes when you divide up a film or a cinematic into Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, it gives you sort of an overview of how to adjust tone, color, lens choice for the emotional beats of Act 1 or Act 2, Act 3. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a few folders. I'm just going to create an Act 1 folder just because this is just for demo purposes. Right? So if we go up to our menu here, most of our menu is hidden because I've cropped this window down. But over here, we've got cinematics, right? So if we were to kind of expand this guy up full screen, you'd see all those menu items across. So under cinematic, we have 2 things. We've got add level sequence and we've got add master sequence. The difference between the two is that a level sequence gives you simply a timeline where you can put clips in and you can edit clips and all that kind of stuff. So let's create that one first, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a final sort of timeline for my cinematics. So I'm going to go into the cinematics folder. I'm not going to save it in the act folder because this level sequence will be my Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Okay? So I'll just, for the sake of today's lecture, call it the whole film. Okay? And then so we'll save that. And then you can see straight away, once I create that, I pop into the sequencer timeline, right? So we'll come back to this. So now I'm going to pop into the Act 1 folder, right? Now inside here, what I want to do, actually I won't dive into sequences. I'll just create a master sequence for Act 1. And just going to rush ahead here. Yeah, it's probably best if I simplify this. So I'm going to create a master sequence in here so you can see the difference between the two. Right? So I'm going to pop over into my cinematics, and this time I'm going to create a master sequence. And so for this sequence, I'm going to call this all of Act 1. Right? So that's every shot that I'm going to have inside of Act 1. Right? And it'll put an underscore master for me. Now it's going to put this into my game cinematics. And it's going to create a folder called sequences for me. I don't want that. I want it to go right into my Act 1 folder. Now, this is where your pre-planning and your storyboards and all that kind of stuff comes into play. Because then you can sit down with your storyboards and you go, okay, for Act 1, I have 5 shots or 10 shots or what have you. Right? So that's how you define that here, the number of shots. And I'll just leave it at the default. We'll create 5 shots. And this timeline will show me the duration of this level sequence master. Okay? It's going to create a directory for me in here called shots. It's going to prefix every level sequence with the word shot, and the first number is going to be 10, and it's going to increment by 10, right? Which is really quite clever, and I'll talk a little bit about why in a second, right? And yeah, that's it. So we're going to create a master sequence just to see what it gives us out of the box, right? So now we've got our timeline populated with our current cinematic camera actor, right? You can see that cinematic camera actor is here. We can see the thumbnails in the time clip. And we go to the content browser and we go into all of Act 1. This is the master level sequence, which is what we have here. I'm just going to cover this for a quick sec. All of Act 1 master, right? It's here, all of Act 1 master. So what we're looking at is the timeline for that level sequence. And we have a default shot in here, right? But if we come over here and we open up the shots folder, we can see we've got shot 10, shot 20, and so on, right? So those are our various different shot setups that we have access to, right? So the numbering is, I can't talk enough about this because it's quite clever. Back in the day when we were used to storyboard panels, we go shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, and then if somebody wanted to insert a shot between 1 and 2, we go, okay, that's shot 1A, And then they say, well, we need another shot. We go, okay, shot 1B, and so on and so forth. The problem with that, though, is that it's very, very difficult for any sorting algorithm on any PC anywhere on the planet to sort of deal with lettering, right? I mean, it does, but it's just a little bit awkward. And there are certain things that can sometimes get in the way, right? So this system's great because it allows you 9 different variations that you can plug in there. And it's just a simple way of looking at it, right? The other thing that's quite clever that that VFX artists generally tend to do is when they're creating their timeline, instead of going from shot 0 to shot, whatever, 4,000, frame 0 to frame 4096 or whatever, they will start everything at frame 1000 and then go forward. So that gives you 1,000 frames prior for any shifting that you might need to do back and forth or up and down the timeline. So that's quite a clever new sort of workflow thing for me. And very, yep.
So the master sequence is basically like a template of level sequences.
Yes, that's all. Yeah, that's all that's it. It's just bundled nicely. It's kind of like if I launched the macro that created Maya group nodes for me and put things in the group nodes. That's all it is. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to create the two so that you can see the difference, right? So if I click on the whole film, it gives me this blank level sequence. Now I can come in here and populate it. So if I come in here to my track, right, I can come down and let's see where. Let's pop in a shot track. So in the shot track, I can add a shot and check it out. It automatically takes me to all of the shots that I have, right? Now in this case, because this is my entire film, I don't want individual shots. I'm just going to grab Act 1 Master, right? Now I don't have to touch it. So the beauty of this sort of setup is that you know that the whole film level sequence is just about you putting Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. You know, you might want to change the length of those acts, you might want to flip them around, but basically, this is what you render out as your final, right? You don't really have to touch it. In here, in all of Act 1, you've got a level sequence that drives Act 1, right? And so in here, we've already got shot 10, shot 20, 30, 40, and 50. So it's lined it up for me quite nicely, right? Now I can dive into the individual shots. So this is the cool thing that I like about the way Level Sequencer organizes. Oh, it's kind of cool. I'm not even using my notes. So the muscle memory is kicking in a little bit. Right? So I'm just going to stretch this out briefly, and I'll bring it back. The navigational hierarchy is listed here, right? I've gone into all of Act 1 Master and shot 1, right? So I can always back out this way, or I can always navigate through it through the content browser, right? I can actually go in here and open up individual shots, and it's cool. I'm just working on that shot, and you'll see it labeled here. Right? Okay, so now comes the tricky bit. I say tricky because there's a certain order of operations, and I'm hoping I remember how to do it. Okay, so let's go into all of Act 1 Master. And what I'll probably do is, I think I'm going to add another shot track. I'll show you why. Where are we here? There's so much new stuff in here. It's cool. I wonder if it'll just sense it if I connect this now. Yeah, it just senses it. That's cool. So what I like to do is every other shot do this, right? Just because it's easier to see, if you know what I mean. I can see my cut points and et cetera, et cetera. You know, a lot of production editors I talk to say, no, you want everything on a single timeline. It's just a nightmare. It's easier to cook out EDLs and transfer your edits and work with other people if you got a single timeline. But I think as a beginner, a lot of people like to separate their edits into various tracks so they can kind of see what they're doing. I don't necessarily think it's that important anymore anyway. The reason why editors would put everything into a single track is because the primary way of exporting an edit timeline to get it to somebody else, like a visual effects editor or somebody else, is this old school file format called EDL, or Edit Decision List. And the EDL file format only prints one video track and one audio track, or the data for it rather. But we have we have XML, which is more advanced. You can print multiple tracks, and then you got AAF, which is Avid's file format. You can print multiple tracks. So I don't know if it's that relevant anymore. I think it's just sort of a legacy way of working. Okay, so let's dive into the shot. Now this is where we can really kind of start to work on our cinematic. So you can see that Cine Actor 2, our cinematic camera is already there, right? And quick second, I'm just going to stretch this guy out so you can see a little bit more what's going on here. So we're inside our Cine Camera Actor 2, and you can see over here we have aperture, focal length, all that kind of business. Now we can set keyframes for them in here, right? So it's basically just like any other non-linear editor, right? Like a Premiere or an After Effects or that kind of a thing, right? The one thing that back when I was using the level sequencer for the first time, there was no ability to cross dissolve or fade. Right? If you think about it, in a real world, a real-time context, that's kind of difficult to do. So we had to cheat it by burning the lights down and turning everything black. But it looks like they've incorporated a fade track. There's a level visibility track. That's the other track that I used for when you cut from scene to scene. Right? What you generally tend to do is you can take one level, make that invisible, and turn on the visibility of another level. And that's essentially your cut to another scene if you're building the whole thing inside of one map, right? So I found that quite awkward, but it was an interesting way of working. So you would literally hide one level, one area of the level, turn on another area of the level. So I thought that was interesting. There's a whole bunch of other stuff here. Media track, I believe, just brings in an AVI or a set of image sequences, etc. And there's a few here that I'm going to learn how to use. So some really interesting things here, right? So this is a nice way of quickly adding an Actor 2 sequencer, but I don't like doing it this way because it automatically creates folders and tracks for you here. I like to have a little bit more control over that, so I can come in here and I can create a series of subtracks, subscene tracks, right? And so inside these subscenes tracks, one of the first things that I use these for would be for like animation, right? And I can come in here and put in another subscene track, and this would be for lighting, right? Now, the benefit of this is twofold, right? So each of these subscene tracks, right, are a container, right? And inside these containers, you can assign sort of custom lights, right? So you can add to, oh, no, not there. I don't remember how to do this now. But you can add your own custom lights in here and just animate the lights on the subscene track here. And that keeps it separate from the rest of the cinematic that you're working on inside your level. But you can also farm this out to somebody on your team. So somebody on your team could be working on the lighting subscene track, and it won't interfere with, say, somebody animating on the animation track. So I really like the way they've set this up to allow for teams to be able to work on shots together simultaneously. Just gonna flip through my notes here to find where I've got that set. There's a few things to kind of be wary of as well. Yes, I'm going to touch on this. One of the things you want to kind of be careful of is your time code, right? So it comes default set to 30 frames per second, which is the North American standard for frames per second. We want 24 frames per second, right? And it's giving me a little warning. Split mismatch and display rate. Oh yeah, display rate. 24 frames per second. Film. Why is it not giving me PAL? Oh no, incompatible links. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So actually, let's flip it over to PAL, right? Because we know that we're saying, well, the sequence is being presented as 25 frames per second and uses an underlying tick resolution of 24 ticks every second. Ah, okay. So somewhere there's a tick setting at 24 frames per second. So I need to investigate where that is so that it syncs up with what you've got going on inside your level sequencer. It's probably in editor preferences somewhere. And it's just, again, the frames per second that you're capturing your cinematics at. And let's see. Show time as, oh yeah, I like to set the show time as NDF timecode. So timecode shows you hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. And that's the standard, right? So if you take a look at the time frame down here, it's just a standard way of exchanging information with musicians, animators, etc. Now you can go seconds, and it just shows you seconds, but it's difficult to work with seconds because, you know, you'd have to, if somebody said, yeah, this sequence is 782 seconds, you'd have to do the math to figure out what that actually meant, right? And then you can show it as frames. That's animator speak, right? So animators deal entirely in feet and frames, but it's so old school, I don't know if anybody uses that way of speaking anymore. So NDF timecode, right? So that'll be for us. So we've set out the rough back structure. That's all good. I'm just trying to find.
Al,
Yes. Yes.
do these settings then apply to all of our shots, or do we have to go and apply every individual shot?
Yeah, every individual level sequencer. That's a little bit annoying, right?
So is this something we could set up when we make the master sequence?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Which actually I forgot to do. So it's a good point. So when I'm creating a master sequence, those settings will be there, and it'll propagate throughout the different shots, right? So, okay. Just having a quick look here on subscene tracks. Okay, here we go. So, subscene track and yeah, I thought so. So I should be able to double click on the subscene track and get in there. Unless it's just because I haven't added a sequence to it. It's subscene track. Unless they've changed the way subscene tracks work. Let me just take a look again. Here. Subscenes. Net track, shot track. Yeah, maybe they've changed the way subscene tracks work. Because in my notes, I've just added a subscene track, double click on it, and you get inside the animation level sequence. And away you go. Okay. Let me take more. No, it's not letting me do it. Okay, so there is something with that. Okay, I think a good idea would be to sort of, hopefully all of you guys have got Unreal up and running and loaded, installed. Samantha, looking at you. Let's see. Just catching up on the chat here. Oh, adding an alpha channel image to a media play. Okay. But let's see if everybody first has got Unreal Engine up and running. just popping back into the chat just to double check. When do we make Undertale? Huh. Maybe not. Oh, May asked how much of this module is going to be filmed. Uh, Again, just as a reminder, one of the reasons why that there's this focus on the level sequencer and composure and all that whole side of Unreal Engine is because indie game development is pretty much what you guys are already doing by putting together your final major projects. You're working on an independent game. Now, there's a choice that I offer you guys. I can take indie game development a little bit further by talking about market analysis, demographics, entertainment industry economics, market trends, and have you guys fill out reports in terms of analyzing how, say, one first-person shooter kind of goes against another first-person shooter and have that inform your game design documents. Or I can teach you about virtual production using a game engine. So it's up to you. If you want to go to the marketing and entrepreneurship side of indie game development, no problem. No problem at all. I enjoy talking about that as well. Right? Or if you want to make another game, another indie game for this module, you are welcome to do that as well. Right? A lot of the stuff I'm talking about is also transferable, you know, because you will likely be involved with trying to make a cinematic inside your game, possibly, right? So a lot of that stuff will cross over. This is just my opportunity to expose you to a whole other side of Unreal Engine that's just now taking off and accelerating because of the Mandalorian, right? I know I was being a little bit facetious when I said, oh, I can give you lectures on business, marketing, and demographics, and, you know, but I was just trying to illustrate the point. Closest to anything game related we've done on anything related to games so far in game dev was programming OpenGL. Really? Okay. I did not know that. I did not know that. So other than the OpenGL module, you guys are not building your own games in the other modules, then, is it?
That might be game design as well.
Well, yeah. No, I'm talking to the game dev guys, the game programmers. Wow. Okay.
From previous year, so game dev.
Yeah.
The only thing which was related to games was graphics.
Oh, okay.
I think it's just basically making graphics from scratch using
Oh, yeah. Okay.
using C++, and then Unity.
Okay.
And that's it. And then third year project is they give you a list of projects and you choose one.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Well, that's unless it changed it this year, but that's what I remember from last year.
I'm not entirely sure. Just because this is the first time I'm teaching you guys, so I don't know what your program is like.
That's why I moved to game design.
Yeah. Okay.
Point of doing game dev when you don't make games.
Yeah, that's a little bit strange. Okay. I hate to say this. Can I take 2 seconds? Because I've got a phone call that I need to answer super quick. I will be right back. Just give me 2 seconds. And I'm going to have to think about this because that is not right. That situation is not right if you're a game programmer and you're not making games. So, and to the rest of you guys, my regular cohort, you guys know me. I will generally shift and change to try to cover things that benefit you guys. If you guys really want to know that when you leave the university will benefit you in terms of career-wise, studio-wise, things like that. So I will pose a question to my regular cohort. Do you mind after I cover the level sequencer and a little bit about virtual production, I'll go over how to get composure working again. If we dive back into making another game, either way, it's going to be beneficial for you guys. I just didn't want to repeat that for my regular cohort. I wanted to give them a different kind of perspective. Unity, I've used Unity. Unity isn't on the course anymore. Not entirely true. We do have licenses of Unity. We've just slowly stopped teaching it, but we can drop back into Unity. It's just that the support structure for Unreal is a little bit more robust. The community's growing. But yeah.
This is what me asking them if they are still doing Unity as a game dev, because that's what I did last year.
Yeah.
But it seems that we removed Unity now from the course. So.
Yeah, it's sort of tough. We used to do all three, right? We used to do Unity, Unreal, and the CryEngine, right? But one of the major reasons why we decided to, for my cohort anyway, why we decided to pick Unreal and stick with it, is the same philosophy of if we have a 3D animation course, I'm not going to teach you Maya, Houdini, 3D Studio Max, and XSI all at once. It's just too much. So it's better to kind of learn a singular sort of engine inside and out from top to bottom, and that way you have a solid foundation from which to learn other engines. Right? So Game Maker Studio, I've never tried that actually. It's been around for eons, and I haven't tried Game Maker Studio. So. Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break, and I'll come back to you guys. Okay, this is a good opportunity for me to grab a cup of coffee and for you guys to grab a drink, and I'll pop back in a second.
Let's sit in. Beth said I have too much power now.
Oh, I didn't mute this. Okay, well, I'm back. There we go. Let's see. Am I still? Okay, there we go. I'm back. Is that video still? Oh, yeah. Let me connect up the video camera again. Okay, so let's segue to a different discussion then. 1 sec. Just setting up the old camera.
Oh, yeah, I feel like stream back on.
Yeah, don't forget the Discord.
What's up?
Don't forget the Discord.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for catching my back. Oh, I forgot to pause my Twitch stream. Oh, that's good. Man, did I get hot mic'd? What did I say? Okay. I'm just going to go live on this. Okay, so let's have a bit of a discussion about how we want to proceed with this module. You guys do understand my logic of trying to open up another skill set in terms of virtual production. So that's fine. We can take a step back from that, and then we can talk a little bit about what we want to accomplish and achieve here. So I'll probably finish out maybe next week. We'll do our kind of last session of virtual production. It'll be a really super rush job then, because I'm not going to be able to extend it out for the rest of the semester. But I'll walk through there was that issue with the alpha, especially in terms of keying inside of Composure. We'll walk through that again slowly, right? Because I do need to get a prototype up and running. I'm going to do it on my iPhone again, and then we'll connect up the iPhone and do sort of a live image capture. I might actually be able to flip over to that. Today? No, it's probably too late to do today. But in terms of going forward in the course, do you guys want to build another game? Or at least talk about planning to build another game?
As cool as it would be, I think everyone would.
Yeah, we were already making a game.
Yeah, I know.
Prototype.
Yeah, I know. That. Do you see what I mean when I said indie game development? Let's try and do something a little bit different.
Sometimes game the students have no experience of actually making a game. Unless, except of change makers, they chose to do that.
Yeah. Ah, okay. So that's
What we could do is have 1 week of like actual game dev. Mine's might cut it out.
Yep. Oh yeah, you're cutting out a little bit.
Wait, okay. Right, so I was thinking we could do one game dev week.
Yeah.
And like switch between
Yeah.
game dev and visual stuff, visual production.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
do like 3 weeks of game dev, 3 weeks of virtual production.
yeah, I think that might be a good idea. But what may end up happening is that I'm not guiding you through a complete project from start to finish. I'm just going to be teaching tools. And then it'll be up to you. Well, I do that anyway, actually, in my other lectures. But it'll be up to you to take those bits of knowledge and just see where it fits in your own personal projects. The other thing that just dawned on me as well is that there's a certain level of control that needs to start being layered into a lot of the virtual production tools, i.e., one of the producers I talked to would like to be able to walk one of the actors around inside the scene. So there's a lot of stuff that I need to do that's really about, it really blurs the line, right? I'll give you an example, right? So I've got a scene set up where my VFX supervisor says, well, a helicopter's going to come in and I need to see what vegetation is around the landing zone and what we need to rebuild and where we can put ruins and stuff like that. And it's all kind of packaged in a game that you run and you execute. And so I need to put in the ability to select and highlight the helicopter, move, scale, and rotate it and place it in 3D space inside the engine, right? So it's very much like, picking up, a crate and moving it over to an edge so that the player can jump on it, climb up another height, or placing ladders and things like that. So there's that involved in, as well as the ability to take one of the existing actors, their model, skin it, rig it, and be able to run it around inside the game edge. So it's the lines are really, really blurred, right?
Yeah, surely that helps with testing as well.
Yes, yeah. So let's try this. I'll finish off this lecture with for today, and then next class I'll talk about connecting your iPhone and doing a live composite, and then the following we'll switch back over to the level sequencer and we'll bring in an animated character. Right? We'll call it by being. So if we bring in a character, I'll talk a little bit about connecting animation libraries up to the character, right? So, and then we'll kind of take it from there. I don't think we can create a clear demarcation line of, okay, this week we're doing indie game development, this week we're doing virtual production. I think it might be more useful if the two are sort of embedded, because they're going to cross over anyway, right? Because there is so much crossover between the two topics. It might be a wise idea to approach it that way. May Davies is typing, so just wait a second here. It will cross over inevitably anyway. Yeah, but I see the logic you were trying to get at, right? So it's almost kind of like two topics, sort of what I did with my old cohort for Creative Practice 1 and 2. I made Creative Practice 1 about modeling, Creative Practice 2 about animation, right? But it was all part of the Creative Practice branch of that first year. Right. Okay, while May is typing, I'm going to sit here and try to puzzle out why I can't. So one of the things that's baffling me here a little bit is the fact that I'm going to arrange the windows here. This should be better. These should act as containers. So I should be able to import an animated character here, or geometry anyway. I'm surprised I'm so far. I guess there wasn't much conversation between you and Gordon on this module then. Oh, there was discussions between me and Gordon and Kaplan as well, in terms of the indie game development module. The conversation I had, they were expecting me to simply touch on virtual production. It was just sort of on the fly while teaching you guys. I thought, well, these guys are already making indie games, so why not put more of the emphasis on virtual production? So that was a personal decision of mine. I had no idea that you guys hadn't built a game yet in game dev. Right? So that's the reason why. I'm sort of being maverick here a little bit.
Welcome to Game Dev, which is basically software development with graphics.
Oh yeah, okay.
This is literally that.
Yeah. Okay, well, you're in good company, because the cohort I got this year, not to big you guys up, but the game design students I have this year, they're a good bunch. They got some really good games. And they've just been a pleasure to teach. Okay, there you go. You guys can pay me later. But yeah, you're in good company. You got some good game designers in this group with you. Right? So it's a good opportunity to kind of explore a few different things. Okay, so you know what? Instead of faffing about trying to get this working properly, perhaps what I'll do is I'll have a quick look. In the meantime, I've given you sort of a taste of a few things to sort of muck about with. So my kind of hope is that you guys get the free software that's out there and available for you, installed, loaded, and running, and pull in a couple of Megascans assets and throw a Cine Camera actor in there, right? And see if you can set up your level sequences. Now, I haven't shown you how to keyframe, animate your cameras as of yet. I just want you to kind of set things up a little bit here first. So I'm just going to pop over and gonna have a look at UE4, add to subscene track. It's strange to me that that has been changed, because it was quite a logical way of working. So, let's see. Subscene track. Oh, weird. Okay. Okay. That is unusual. Okay, so it does seem like they've changed it where you can add sort of sequences to here, but I wouldn't want to add a shot 1 back or a shot 10 back into a shot 10 level sequence. Now, first of all, there's probably a redundancy calculation involved, and secondly, it's just not a clean way of working. So I think what we need to do, and I'm just making this up on the fly. So if we go into our cinematics folder, we can create another folder for, let's say props, because I don't have animations. So let's go in here. I'm going to create a props folder. And in here, I'm going to, bear with me here. I'm just going to come in here and create a level sequence, right? And I can put that level sequence inside my cinematics props. And this will be my prop 1. Cliff.
Oh,
Yep.
Discord freaked out, you got disconnected, and we don't have a stream.
Oh my God. That's just infuriating. Okay. No problem. No problem. We're coming back. Coming back.
It's good to know that Discord is having a disadvantage.
Yeah. Well, it's probably my household. Again, I got 4 people online.
It is probably Discord. It's
Yeah, it could be. You know, their server farm might not have been built to handle the sudden surge in traffic. Who knows? Okay, so I will walk you through what I'm doing again. So, actually, I should relabel this because it'll get confused with the regular props folder. So I'm going to call these cine props, just for the time being, right? And inside here, my goal is to try to populate my animation track. Let's make another sub-track, actually. I'll create a subscenes track and call this one props, right? And so this will be custom animated props, right? So if I had ships flying overhead of my character, and then the director says, well, they're going too fast, can you slow those down? I can do it, and it'll be isolated within its own subscene track. It won't affect anything else. That's the idea of separating your pipeline out like this, right? So inside the, oops, I floated that folder. Inside the city props, this is a bit kludgy, but bear with me, right? I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to create another cinematic level sequence. I'm going to put that in my cinematics city props, and I'm going to call this prop 001, and this will be my blocks. So I'll save that. Now, the idea is that this will now feed into my Act 1. Oh yeah, all of Act 1 master. So I'm going to pop into all of Act 1 master. I'm going to go into shot 10. And oh yeah. So in props, I'm going to click on add sequence, and we should have prop 1 sequence, right? So this track will hold the animations for my props. It's really weird because back when I was using it, I could just double click on this and I would be inside here, but that's okay, right? So in here, I am now inside my prop track, and I can add an actor, right? So in here, I don't know, I'll add my, that's the level sequence. So why isn't it keeping my folder structure? That's a bit annoying. So let's say huge canyon, standalone, etc., right? So now, even though nothing has changed in my viewport, anything that I do animation-wise will just be in this viewport, right? Or just be contained in this track, right? That animation data is just in that track. So it keeps it nice and neat in terms of how you want to control your individual assets. So let's say you've got a scene where a character is moving across all these shifting tectonic plates, right? You can conceivably separate each tectonic plate on their own subtrack and, you know, play with the timing that way. Or that could be too granular for you. What I mean by too granular is it's too detailed. You could end up with hundreds of tracks all controlling each individual elements. Maybe you just want to, maybe you're more comfortable working with several elements just in one main track. Maybe you don't need a sub-scene track at all. So this was just me showing you how you can organize yourself in terms of your workflow. And how I generally tend to organize myself is I separate animation, lighting, props. You know, that's the base three that I start off with. Just trying to remember where I go after that. I've got a list of categories here. It would be sort of helpful to kind of just walk through it. No, it's just animation, lighting, props to begin with. Right. So there we go. So we've just keyframed our first animations. Now I can back out to my shot 10. I can look at my Cine camera actor here, and I can also set transform keys on that, right? So if I wanted to, say go over here, I'm just going to roughen the camera move. So I'm going to go into where I'm piloting my camera inside here, and let's say move that in there. We'll set a key for that, right? And now we've got that moving, and why is my camera not moving? Okay, you got keyframes on there. Okay, the camera should be moving. Unless it's a runtime thing. Okay. Well, once you get a Cine camera actor in there, I recommend that you start experimenting, because that's basically what I'm doing here. I don't understand why it doesn't work anymore. And again, something may have changed as well. Just like the sub-scenes track structure, which it looks like they made it more awkward. But there we go. That's probably a good place to start anyway, is to bring a Megascans asset in and just try animating it. And setting up your cameras. I guess it'll have to be static shots for the time being until we can figure out why the camera's not responding to keyframes accurately. Is it because I
was just fiddling with this out.
Yeah.
For some reason, when you pilot in the second window,
Yep.
it's not actually selecting the camera.
Ah,
So you're not moving the camera, and so the keyframes is just static. So if you move the camera in the viewport and then keyframe it, it works.
Okay, let's give that a shot.
Also, S is a hotkey, as it turns out.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, why is hotkey? No, why? So it's working for you, but not for me. Oh, I'm keyframing the wrong thing. You'd think keyframing transforms would do it, huh? Ah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Got it. Okay. So where is it saving the keys? Why didn't it accept it? So it's saving the keys on the C camera actor. It's really strange. You know what? I'm going to back out of here because I want to find out where it's saving those keyframes. Because I'd like to know the individual channels that are accepting those keys, right? So let's pop back in here. And I just noticed somewhere along the line, I created two Cine camera actors. Oh, Lordy. Okay. So I think we are using Number 2. I'm gonna hop back over here. Number 2 selected. Hit the S key. Move this on over here. Hit the S key. Okay, cool. So we've got tick marks here. And it's saving on the locations and rotations. Huh. So when I keyframed it here, it's not taking it at all. Right? So I'm gonna, let's say, move this over here. I'm gonna hit the key. Oh, now it's taking it. Aha, okay. I think I got it. Some software needs you to set an initial key before it can accept other keyframes. I've noticed that behavior sometimes. So I think it's a mixture of what you said about hitting the S key, in addition to, once I do that, now I can grab that transform channel, place a key. It knows that it knows I want to place keys on that time frame, on that track, and it'll do it. See what I mean, though, about the level sequencer? And why I have to continually sort of go over it again? There are these little niggly behavior things that are going to take a little bit of practice to get used to. They're sort of counterintuitive, but until you sort of figure out how it all works, you just sort of work within the system. And it's also a possibility, kind of my inexperience with level sequencer. There could be some experienced level sequencer guys out there going, you're keying it wrong. You actually need to do it this way, and et cetera, et cetera. But for the rudimentary and for the basics, this is what I'm comfortable with. To give you an allegory, right? If you're inside of Maya, you can keyframe animate entirely in the graph editor. It's not easy. Not easy. And you'll probably get seasoned animators going, why are you keyframing inside the graph editor? Is it easier? You can use the animation tracks, and et cetera, et cetera. But when you're first learning, just understanding how the graph editor works and captures transform data is very valuable, and it's not wrong. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a good place to start. Bring in a couple of assets, set up a camera, keyframe the camera, and just have a nice swooping moments. Actually, I did have that direction in the brief where the heroes of a television show are heading towards a cathedral, let's say, right? So there needs to be 4 or 5 GV shots. GV shots are general view shots of the cathedral looking stark, imposing, and intimidating, right? So that will be what I give to you guys. I'd like to see some GV, general view shots of whatever environment that you create that's intended to say something. Like this place is hazardous, this place is dangerous, or this this place is just ominous, whatever, right? And that puts us at 1:15, and I think that would be a good opportunity for you guys to dive in for the next half hour to see if we can set this up. And any issues that you might run into, I'll be here too, so I can help you through it. What I'd like to do, especially because I'm not in a classroom with you guys, is have you guys try stuff while I'm still hanging out online, so that if you run into problems, we can sort of openly discuss it on Discord. Okay? Celebrity 1 and 2 prams. My God. Okay, so any questions about that? It should be quite fun to put something like that together. Am I still broadcasting? Are you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so I will leave you guys to it, and I will check back in sort of 10 minutes before the end of class and see how you guys are getting on. I will be here. Obviously, I'm just going to mute, right? And I'll let's see what you guys cook up. Anybody having trouble with Unreal and Epic Megascans and all that kind of stuff?
You have to do it in a virtual project. The virtual.
No, you don't. No. You can open up a blank project. I just naturally gravitate towards that because it's the context of what I'm doing. But really, I don't think there's any. The only thing that's different about using the virtual project template is you get this tape recorder. That seems to be the only thing different. When you open up a blank project in the virtual production template, you get this slate and take. So yeah, just you can open up a blank project. It doesn't matter. Okay, I will check back in with you guys.
Oh, Al,
Yeah.
how do you preview your master sequence?
Oh, yeah, good point. Let me see. So I think you hop up to your master sequence, and you should be able to just. Oh yeah, your solo controls down here, so you can just play it back down here, right? So there are your transport controls down there.
Where's it then displayed?
Oh, jeez. Okay, 1 second. Okay, you guys can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you hop back out to your master sequence, you have your transport controls here. Actually, you also have it in your cinematic viewport. So you can hit play, and it's playing back whatever level sequence you have selected up at the top, right? So if I had dived into shot 10 and hit play, it would be playing back shot 10 for me, right? It should be. Oh, it's piloting City Camera Active 1. So, let's do pilot City Camera Active 2. There you go. So come over here, hit play, right? To get that preview. Now, the fun bit. I like doing this downstairs in the living room, where again, I've got my large screen 4K television set up, and I can have this playing back on that monitor. Oh, it's so fun to work on. Okay, there you go. Any other questions? All right, I will check back with you in a few minutes. And I'm going to end the stream here. Holy cow.